Hey, welcome in everyone. Dom Giordano, it's Dom time, and what else after the election of our lifetime? It didn't really turn out that way from my view. Breaking down the election results, we have in studio with us Miguel A. Concepcion Thomas he's the PA chair of the National Congress of Puerto Rican Rights, and we're going to talk a little bit with him about Latino voters, Pennsylvania, and just the surrounding areas around Philadelphia. Murders Row there, Delaware County, what the heck happened to you? The vote pattern there used to be very Republican, now has gone extremely to the Democrats. Joining us, though, our first caller tonight, Chrissy in Newtown is with us. Hey, Chrissy, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dom. How are you?
Very good.
So I'm really glad to be on the show because I definitely want to talk about the women here. Being someone who really thinks that it's an important, historic event for women, the two hot topic issues were definitely contraceptive rights and equal pay, and those are two things I think all women should find to be very important.
Well, tell me, though, this war on women. Miguel, first I'll ask you, did you find that to be a phony issue, as I do? This Romney was going to come into every drugstore in America and take out contraceptives?
Well, I don't think Governor Romney was going to do that. So it's very interesting to see what was the understanding that folks had.
Yeah, and Chrissy, did you understand that? Did you think that Romney was going to limit contraception in some way?
I thought he was going to limit availability in terms of ease of access based on insurance.
Right. Well, you mean
so
with
so essentially limiting access, because without insurance, prescription rates are astronomical.
I don't know about that. All right, I have to get my calculator out on that. And you said something out, the Equal Pay Act. He had trouble with Lilly Ledbetter, and that got brought up again and again and again, and didn't have a real good answer on that. Thank you, Christy. Thanks very much for the call. Miguel, I mentioned Pennsylvania. Now, you're a Philly guy, as I am?
Yes,
Philadelphia area.
That is correct.
The statistic of the week, the statistic that's just mind-boggling across America, it's even up on the biggest websites that I can think of, Matt Drudge, which gets 1 billion hits, that in Philadelphia, 59 divisions, these are smaller voting blocks, 19,605 to 0 for Obama to Romney. Romney 0, President Obama 19,605 votes in those 59 divisions. The odds, I would think, have to be astronomical. So I'm a fan of voter ID. I think we need that in Philadelphia. And I think something's wrong. Something's fishy in those 59 divisions to me.
Well, Don, here's what I would say to voter ID. Part of the problem of that law was the implementation process, how quickly it came out from one side to try to implement it. And I think that part of the problem was that not a lot of folks were going to be able to have their IDs. I personally believe that we should have some kind of identification. It will be beneficial for folks to have a form of ID. Now, the form in which it was done or it was presented, that's what is on debate and what's.
Okay, all righty. Let's take a look, too, at the vote by gender. Here is the vote across America by gender. The gender gap that we can see is still pretty severe, although President Obama had a gender gap among men. So when you go in, when you're Romney, you have the women gender gap, you have the Latino vote. We knew in this election the African-American vote was going to be pretty much similar. That makes it very, very difficult. So we talked about amnesty. Right. Now, is it your sense, we hear all the time that Latinos in general are conservative family values, family-oriented religiously, a lot are Catholic, all those things mixed together. Yet I think the research indicates that a lot of Latinos want government help. They like a certain element of government programs because maybe they're making their way, they're new, they're on the lower end in some cases, and they think government could be helpful. I mean, what do Republicans do then to reach that when you have a group of people that maybe want government?
Well, I think that for Latinos, it's very clear that there is some sense of government help. We don't believe that government is there to do everything for us. And I think that there's where the balance is at. You'll find Latinos in different scales. When this conversation sort of starts, you would have Latinos who would say, no government whatsoever. I take care of my family. I will provide for my family. You have no right to tell me how to raise my children. But then there's when you're coming into this country, one of the things that you find is that you're going to need that little kick push so that you could be part of.
Well,
the
what would that
process.
be? What would Republicans then have to do then, specifically? What kind of program, what do you think is, let's talk the DREAM Act. Now, I am an opponent of the DREAM Act, and I feel for these kids. I've interviewed some of them that their parents have brought here illegally. Now they reach college age, for example. What's the argument we reach New Jersey and Pennsylvania? Let's say we had someone in New Jersey, they have to pay this outrageous rate of tuition if they move to Pennsylvania extra. Why should a kid who's not born here legally get that kind of tuition break? That's one part of the DREAM Act, for example.
Right. I mean, you know what I really like? If you take a look at Texas, Republican, and Governor Perry has done an amazing job with college tuition. I mean, and if there's someone to learn, why do you have to go further away? Learn from the folks who have been doing it in your own party. You know, learn how they're doing it and learn how we can learn from that. I mean, they're very close within that border of Mexico. And so the reality is, let's learn from within. And it amazed me that we're having a conversation about DREAM Act and not engage or embrace some of the folks who have been doing this.
Well, we'll talk about Marco Rubio, but we have another caller for you, Miguel. Let's go to Anthony in Atco. Anthony, welcome to Dom Time. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Dom. Thanks for taking my call. I have a question about the 2016 election. I know in 2008 and 2012, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. What does the GOP need to do, whether it includes a more appealing message to Latinos or other things? What can they do to have a more competitive presidential race in 2016?
Well, once a week, they only give me 22 minutes. I could fill up binders, as Mitt Romney said, binders of women. I have binders of ideas. Thank you, Anthony. But Miguel, I'll go to you first, and I'll give my laundry list of what could be done differently. Give me one thing you think Republicans could have done to make this closer. One thing
only. If I get to say one thing, I would say start a conversation. Don't talk at us, talk to us, and let's have a conversation. Because I think that part of the problem is that we're not talking to each other.
All right, I would say Marco Rubio, we interviewed him. We played some clips last week here on the show of Rubio, would have been a strong vice presidential candidate and would have helped in Florida and a couple of other places. Two, their ground game was lacking. The Obama team was superior. We saw the breakdown on Election Day. And three, the outreach has to be immediate to all these groups. We can't continue to get this. But four might be sort of negative. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's a war on women by a guy like Mitt Romney and contraception and Lilly Ledbetter and all the rest of it, but it wasn't addressed. And I think in the minds even of the caller tonight that it stuck that way.
Right. I mean, the other thing is to add into that laundry list is not just some of the candidates, but also looking for your base within the district. I mean, I'm in the district that sometimes there's certain information that as a voter within a certain party I don't get. And so I think the Republicans going back into that strategy of doing the organizing at the ground level is something that the party has in very few instances used. And I think that they need to master it, become familiar, and do it much better.
All right, we'll talk more with Miguel and with you. You get to us at 866-472-8868 with Dom Giordano. Your thoughts on this? Was there a war on women? I'd love to hear from women. Binders and binders of women, as Mitt Romney said. You can jump on board. No binder here. It's Dom time.